going into networking, remember that you're the expert on you.
Whether you're an entrepreneur or climbing a corporate ladder, there's what they call the season of loneliness.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Unfulfilled Achiever podcast. I'm Melani here again, along with my co-host Justin Wendell. And we're so happy to have you guys back. We hope you've enjoyed our first 4 episodes. We took you from being burned out to realizing that maybe you're an unfulfilled achiever. We talked about passion and purpose and how you can explore your passions to get to your purpose and connect the skills that you have to figure out where you really want to be in life and how you want to live in your purpose. We hope you guys did the homework. We'd love to hear from you if you did the homework. How did it turn out? How did you figure out your passion if you've already figured it out and you're living in it? And if you haven't, let us know where you are on your journey. So make sure you add some information in the comments and also like and subscribe to our channel. We want to keep you guys informed with what we have going on. So today we're going to move into networking. Either you love it or you hate it. I don't know a lot of people who are like in between. It's like you hear networking and maybe extroverts get all excited because, being around people charge them, give them energy. But as an introvert, networking has been something that I've had to work at. What's networking like for you, Justin?
So I'm also an introvert. That has been a major challenge for me, as you mentioned, just trying to get into the networking. But once I realized the criticality of it, it's one of those where I've tried to pull myself out of my shell and start to add some of that extroverted flair, at least in right pockets. But I'll tell you, it's one of the most critical things, whether it's through corporate life, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's just meeting your significant other. Your network makes such a big difference because identifying and getting around people that are similar and can connect you to the next person and the next person makes the biggest difference in accelerating the things you want to do in your life.
Yep. It's an art to networking that sometimes takes time to master. And as you evolve in life, like we talked about, your purpose and passions evolve, your networking hopefully has evolved or will evolve. It's a task that can really help you along your journey. You can't stay and live within a bubble. I learned that along the way. You're really missing out if you aren't out there networking and connecting with people who are in the arenas that you want to be in. So today we want to talk about networking and give you guys some tips and some tricks, things that we've learned along the way. And we'd love to hear from you on how you approach networking and what's worked for you. So let's just talk about that, like how to approach networking. One of the first things I think about when I think about networking is be authentic. No, we talked about knowing yourself, knowing who you are. Bring yourself to the table. Don't try to be what you think others are looking for. People really want to connect with you and figure out who you are and what you bring to the table, not some version of you that you think someone wants to see. And being an authentic, that's how you create genuine connections with people. Being authentic is one of the first things I think about out the gate. What are some of the things you think about?
Well, I think we could probably do a whole episode, and we've touched on it with just that authenticity. And here's some of the critical things about that, because I struggled with this for a very long time. And we talked about on the prior episode having the different versions of ourselves and trying to mold to others. The problem is people are going to typically take you at face value. So whatever you present is they're going to assume, okay, that's the real you. And if you've created that version of yourself and you're trying to build a relationship and then you suddenly switch to the authentic you, they may say, well, that's not what I got to know. And it doesn't really fit now. So you want to make sure as you're networking with the right people and you're getting people that add value to your life, that you add value to theirs. So that authenticity is absolutely critical. From that perspective, it's also about showing that value you're going to bring. And you have to understand what that value is. So if you're going to hear us talk about this work, I think almost in every episode, but if you haven't spent that time to figure that out, you don't know what you're going to bring. And it's absolutely critical that we look at, as I'm networking, especially if I'm networking up, trying to find people that are going to help me kind of accelerate different things, career or otherwise. You have to know what you bring to the table. So I always focused on what are my strengths. If I'm going to, let's say, a conference and they're all 8, 9 figure earners, I want to know what I bring to that table. So I know what I've done and what I can do to help. So I start there. I think that's one of the big things from a networking perspective, especially as you're trying to grow your network. Like you mentioned, you'll kind of go through iterations. I need to know what I bring to the table. So I spend a lot
Yeah,
of time focused there.
absolutely. And also, one of the things that is just so frustrating to me is when people are networking, when it's always just about what they want or what they need from you. Don't be a user. That is the worst. That and the easiest way to get you kicked out of consideration of being in somebody's network. You may not think that you have a lot or you bring a lot to the table, especially if you're just starting out in your career or just starting out in your business. If whatever you're doing is like a new field for you, you feel like, I'm the small guy in the room, like they have all the knowledge. I really just want to, just be in the arena so I can soak up all the knowledge. But you never know what you bring to the table. Even the most successful person has areas of weakness. That person can't know everything. They can't be the expert in every aspect of what they're doing. Like, for example, we've talked about, okay, well, building the podcast, there are certain things that we need. We're learning as we go. Man, if we had somebody who could just come in and just drop knowledge on all this technology, you may be thinking about doing a podcast and maybe we're a little further along than you. So you think, oh, you guys have all the knowledge, but you may bring something to the table that we haven't even touched on yet or haven't had the bandwidth to touch on. So be yourself, like we said, but bring your skills to the table. Share your knowledge. You never know how a strength that you have could be a weakness that somebody else has in the arena.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that I can learn from everybody. So that's how I've positioned myself in my career and everything else. So from that perspective, there's benefit there of how you want to potentially connect with people. But holistically, I look at what are the pockets. Like I know that everybody's still just a person. I know, to your point, they have strengths and weaknesses. I know there are things that I may be able to offer. Now, at the same time, I'm not going to go into that larger room and just start saying, here's all the things I can do and just ramble off, because you're going to lose interest there too. You've got to have some natural flow and just be who you are. It's pretty easy to tell those that are just trying to jam their way in. So you've got to have some of that comfortability and confidence. And the confidence comes from repetition. So you got to do it more than once, spend some time, focus on it. But the better you get at that, the easier it's going to be to build that network. The first couple conferences I went to, being that introvert, I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as somebody engaged me, I could have the conversation and we could talk for a long time. And I would leverage people that I knew that could connect me with others because they've already done some of that. And then that worked well. But a blind kind of go introduce, I'd watch people all the time, like the huge conference rooms, like between speakers, everybody'd be out in like the reception area and just interacting and talking. And I'm like, this is anxiety ridden for me. This is not my strength. But there were pockets, and as soon as somebody came up to me, we'd have a conversation. Not a problem at all. So personally, I'm still working on how do I go up and just have a conversation. And I think part of it is embedded in a natural fear of rejection for whatever that is. And I think a lot of people suffer from that. So kind of getting comfortable with, it's okay if the next person you talk to isn't the perfect match from a business or corporate or whatever experience, but they might lead you to something else. And if nothing else, you're getting more confidence talking to people. So there's a big benefit to that.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just getting the nerves out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the first couple people may not be the best or the most comfortable conversation, but Sometimes I will walk into a big conference room, or, like you said, it's a conference and people are outside networking, and it seems like everybody knows everybody. You walk outside and everybody's paired up. But remember, some people know each other, but most of these people don't know each other. They are doing the same exact thing that you are doing, and people are nervous just like you are. So remember that as you walk into it. I might have my question that I start out in every conversation when I, come to someone, like, I introduce myself and, hey, is this your first time at the conference? This is my first time. Or, what have you found most interesting? What else are you doing? What's on your agenda? And then, that'll get them to talking. And then you can naturally go into who you are, where you're from, what you're trying to get out of the conference. And so I find that I might find that one kind of intro question that seems to work, and I'll just keep using it. These people aren't talking. It's not like they're going to say, I met that Melanie and she asked us all the same thing. Nobody cares. Just figure out what your rhythm is and what works for you and go with it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's also interesting, we tend to go in, especially as we're starting out, as you mentioned, and just feeling like we're at the bottom of the totem pole. Like, why would the next person want to talk to me? But it's actually quite the opposite. And I think one thing that I've realized, especially this year, as I've done a lot more networking, is sometimes the top of the totem pole wants to help more than the rest, and they get to a point where they've done a lot and they've reached certain ranks or certain levels, and they want to just help others come up. Doesn't mean they have a ton of time, so you have to be respectful of that. But again, find where you can bring that value, and that comfort thing. I'm still working on being super comfortable in the large rooms, and I even notice, like, if I go to one where I'm speaking, if I'm doing a monologue, I'm deer in the headlights, like clammy hands, all those two things. But if it's like a panel, I'm completely
Mm-hmm.
fine. That's where my strength is, and I think that's that introvert piece. But there are spots where I'll go when I'm just doing the monologue piece, and people will come up and thank me for the insight. I'm like, did I even say anything of value? I can't even
What
remember
did
what
I
I
say?
covered.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, but remember that, and I think this is something we're going to get into a lot of, that imposter syndrome. We'll want to talk a little bit later, and then definitely a lot next week. Be more confident in yourself, not cocky, but be confident in your skills and what you bring to the table, and realize that what you think is minor may be major for somebody else and maybe can add a massive value to them. So getting over that piece may help you start to create some of those introductions and talk to more people.
The imposter syndrome, like you said, we're going to talk about that next week. We'll have Kim Menninger on our podcast. She has her own podcast. It's called the Imposter Syndrome File. So we're excited to have Kim come on and talk about that more. But the imposter syndrome definitely is something that a lot of people deal with if they're honest. Some people just won't be honest, and they're, to your point, maybe a little cocky, but everybody doubts themselves, at some point. When you're networking, remember you're the expert on you. And I try to remember that as I'm going into, like, doing a speak, or, having a speaking engagement or something like that. I'm the expert on whatever it is I'm talking about. People have no idea what's going to come out of your mouth. Only you know what's going to come out of your mouth. So going into networking, remember that you're the expert on you. And so remember to present yourself in a positive light. Talk about yourself in a positive light, but make it an exchange, a conversation. Don't dominate the conversation. I try to, introduce myself and then ask questions that will get the other person talking. But like you said, us both being introverts, we have similar experiences. We'd love to hear from fellow introverts how you guys approach networking, but also extroverts. Like, extroverts fascinate me because that is the total opposite of who I am and my personality. But I know people who just love to network, and being around people and talking to new people really gives them energy. I really love to hear from you extroverts out there. Drop some comments in the comment and let us know how you approach networking, and what are you thinking as you walk into a big room. And that might be something that we can include in our process to make it a little bit easier for us.
No, absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing that I work on too because I really do think it's a confidence game, especially for us introverts, is getting over some of the all the voices in our head saying, "Nope, just stay back in the comfort zone." Some of those things are just almost practicing with people we know or people that we know that are adjacent. Like, just go up and start talking to them because there's a little less edge to it, but having more of that experience and running into that. I'm with you though. I love watching people that are complete opposite of me to say what strengths do they have that I can personally work on to improve myself. So I'm interested to hear that as well. And also the introverts, as you mentioned, people that maybe have conquered this and figured this out and that do it more often. I'd love to hear kind of their tools and things they use. For me, it's I have to kind of get the first one out. I have to just go up to somebody and start talking, and then I'll pay attention to body language. So I spend a lot of time focusing on emotional intelligence. So I'll watch and see what their body language is to see where it's going. But I'll also be careful because I think you hit on something extremely important. Listen more than you talk. From that emotional intelligence perspective, people like to talk. They like to talk about themselves, like talk about what they're doing, especially as they're coming up because they're very proud of the progress they're making, or they're also kind of just looking forward and they want to talk about that vision. So the more that you listen, the more engaged they're going to be. You'd be surprised. Some of the best networking you're going to make, you say next to nothing because they were allowed to talk and they got comfortable and felt comfortable talking around you. And that then opens them up and takes down some of that guard, which I think it goes a long way.
That's true. And then you can close the deal by saying, I've loved talking to you. This was a great conversation. Like, let's exchange information. I'd love to take the discussion offline. And then you can maybe put a little bit more out about yourself. But that's a really good tip. Get people talking more about themselves. And then you can be comfortable standing there. You're still in the conversation, but you don't have to lead the conversation. Listen to what they're saying and think about, okay, what's the next question that I might ask them. So that's another good way to immerse yourself in the conversation, and they don't even realize they talked the whole
Yeah.
time, which is a
They'll
tip.
probably offer you something where you can interject, where you can help.
Yeah.
If you let them go through, you might be able to pick up small pieces of where they're struggling and say, "Oh, have you thought about this? Or have you tried this yet?" And they may say, "Well, what is that?" Or "I haven't thought about that." Or "We tried it, but we struggled." And you may be able to then offer some expertise or your own skills or some your experience that can help fix it. Again, don't do it like, "Hey, well, if you pay me $500 an hour, I can do this for you." No, just do it in a question like you're having just a conversation, because you'd be amazed how many people will then say, "Well, wait a minute, is that what you do? Do you have a business doing this?" Or in the corporate world, it is, "Oh, I didn't know you had that skill set. We have a role that might fit you." That happens all the time. So being able to have those conversations and find those pockets where you can show your skills without dumping on somebody will open some doors.
Yeah. And talking about corporate versus entrepreneurial, a lot of the tips that we've come up with and thought about, things that we've used, I think they can apply both ways.
Yes.
There may be a couple of things that are better suited to an entrepreneur versus corporate. One of the things that I was reading a book, and I did a post about this on LinkedIn. I was in the airport just randomly, trying to get some chips between flights, and I saw a book, and it was about networking. And the key thing that I took away from that has really helped me approach networking differently is think more about what you can do for that person versus what can that person do for you. Obviously, we're all selfish and we want to connect with people for our personal reasons. We want to add certain skill sets to our roster, or get in the arena, and we know that these people can open doors. But when you do make connections, make sure that you're nurturing those connections. So, one of the things that I do is if I see an article and I know that this is something Justin's interested in, Justin's doing, real estate investments, or he loves cars. I see this article, I'm going to just shoot it to him, not ask him for anything. Hey, I saw this article about these Lamborghinis. I thought this was interesting. What do you think? This is totally off the topic of business or whatever it is we're doing. We're fostering that genuine connection. And then that person realizes that I interact with them outside of our business relationship. This person connects with me and doesn't even want anything with me. They genuinely want to befriend me or connect. That makes a big difference versus the I'm only reaching out to Justin when I need something. Hey, can you help me with XYZ? He's not going to be as inclined to help me because it doesn't feel as genuine.
No, I think you're 100% correct. And I always tend to think back, and I'm thinking of the people as you're talking that do that regularly, right? I've got a couple of friends. They'll send me something from TikTok that's real estate oriented, or they'll send me motivation, different pieces. And I had one recently that was talking about law of attraction because that's something I've been big on lately. And I'm like, it's crazy to see how much of this is coming out, but that's me spending time networking with like-minded people and then making sure you have that nurturing back and forth because you're 100% correct. And I think this is really big in corporate. This is one of those things that I did early on that people thought I was crazy. Is our senior leaders, when I was 6 layers down, they were still people to me. I still talk to them like they were people. I was interested in bourbon collections and different things they were doing, and those different things. And that humanizes you versus being another number as an employee. And you can be a fantastic employee and there's a level that will help you. But if you add that human element and you connect with people, they're now going to want to see you succeed. They're going to invest more in you. It's just human nature. So understanding that, and don't do this with a expectation of result, because that will be seen as well. Do it because you genuinely want to connect with people, and that will strengthen those pieces. There are still people that I talk with less on a professional perspective because they were so far above me, but I still reach out and we still talk every once in a while on a personal level. We talk about, hey, how's things going at your job, etc. But we connected on a personal level. And those are people that I know that if I really wanted to jump back in, they would call me if they had something open. So, that connection, those things last.
When you talk about senior leaders, so from a corporate perspective, have you ever walked in a room and you see the director, the VP of the group or whatever, and all of the folks who report in are kind of congregated together and talking because they're comfortable with each other, and the VP is kind of standing off to the side because people are afraid and uncomfortable to talk to that person.
Yeah.
So this is where the it's lonely at the top comes in. They understand that people are intimidated, and a good VP or someone who's higher up will come and engage, but a lot of times they're standing off to themselves. That's your opportunity to walk up and introduce yourself. Hey, I'm XYZ. I work in this department. XYZ is my boss. um, you talked about something, in an email or some kind of communication, that they had out. I thought that was interesting. Can you
Yep.
give me a little more insight? Try to think when you're going into these settings that, who's going to be in the room, who you might want to connect with, and just think of an opening and make it something that can be personal to them if you know something about them. Or, like I said, if they've sent some communications out, use that as an opportunity to get your foot in the door and to get them talking. You'll be surprised. They'll go into a little more detail about it, but then they'll ask you more about you. Oh, so you report to Justin. Oh, so what are you working on? And then that person will, learn a little bit more about you. I am huge on skip level meetings. You'll hear me talk about
Yep.
that a lot. As leaders, we should be having them. You should be connecting with the folks who report to your directs. But as the person who's interested in climbing up the ranks, you have to take charge of your career and you have to make sure you're getting exposure. And so be bold when you're talking to that VP. I'd love to hear more about this. Would it be possible if we did a coffee chat? They never get invited to stuff, especially by folks who are, lower level employees. They'll be so impressed. I've had people reach out to me and, can we go to lunch or can we chat or I'd love to pick your brain on this. Those folks absolutely stick out in my mind because they were bold enough to ask. And that's how we make a connection. And I remember them going forward.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's still weird for me to sit back and think about being an SVP at a Fortune 100 company. I'm like, okay, we actually did get there
Mhm.
because, and I think that's important to understand is back to the human element. All the leaders are still people. You know, a lot of them are hustling. They're trying to run up the ladder, trying to do different things, but they're still people. And then some of them are still dealing with the I can't believe I'm here. I have to do everything possible to stay here. And they lose connection on different pieces. They have struggle with that. So I think that's actually a great suggestion. Again, do it with the positive intent without expectation of return.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's going to be seen through. I think that's extremely important because then you're going to be seen in a negative light. You're now the person that's just trying to get it, get ahead the wrong ways, and versus kind of doing the work. So be careful there. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I was the type that I didn't care who you were in my organization, 3, 4, 5 levels down. You had a one-on-one at some point with me. I just believe it's extremely important. I try to do full team meetings. I try to do regular one-on-ones, and people struggle with that too. They're like, well, wait a minute, this is almost too much exposure. I'm like, well, no, we need to have that. But take advantage. If you don't have a leader that's that type, don't be afraid to do what Melanie suggested and find that entry point. Because whether you're an entrepreneur or climbing a corporate ladder, there's what they call the season of loneliness. And that's that season where you're moving out of the comfort zone of the people that you've worked with. And you're now moving up to people you haven't quite done their level yet. So you're in this in between and you hit that multiple times. So those people a lot of times are struggling to find the fit in and the connections. They want to connect with the people they've always connected with, but they have to create a little bit of a barrier and separation because that's how it works in a corporate world. But they're not quite to that next level. But there is still that opportunity to connect with them and find ways to help them and create yourself as a standout doing things for the right reason that will then ultimately return rewards. I can't tell you how many times I've had to take advantage of that, and I wish I had learned it sooner because I may have taken a couple more steps. It paid extreme dividends once I got comfortable with that, and started to realize people are people and connect with them. It definitely took my career a lot longer.
Yeah. Reach out, target the folks that you want to connect with. That goes across the board from an entrepreneurial perspective, corporate perspective, whatever the case it is of that you're doing. Target the people that you'd like to have in your network, the skill sets you'd like to have in your network. If there are certain geographies that you're trying to get your foot in the door, um, think about the things that you need if you had your dream team of your network and write it down so that when you are networking or you're going to an event or you're thinking about going to an event, oh, you know what, I need that skill set. These kinds of folks are going to be at that event, or this person in particular is going to be at that event. Like, have an actual plan. I think that's probably part of what makes it so nerve wracking is when you go in, if you don't have a plan, you feel like a deer in headlights. You see all these people, you see all these opportunities, but you didn't prepare for it. You didn't think about who was going to be in the room, what I can say to them, how I can introduce myself. And also, when you do get your foot in the door, you have the opportunity to talk to the people you want to talk to. Always ask, what can I do for you? It's probably going to throw them off because people don't ask them, what can I do for you? People are afraid to ask that question for fear that they'll get this, something dumped on them. Most leaders are pretty thoughtful, and it'll probably throw them off and they'll have to think about it, but that might be a way that you guys can follow up. Maybe we can have a coffee chat and you can think about it, and we can talk about it then. So take that into consideration. Plan out your networking and who you want to be in your network. One of the other things that we talked about that goes across the board as well is join groups based on your interests. This is another part of being authentic. What are you actually genuinely interested in? When you're in the room with people who share common interests, that makes it a lot easier as well. When I walk into a room of like minded people, my guard is down because I know we're going to talk about stuff that I enjoy talking about.
Yeah, I think that's you are going to find, like to your point, like-minded people, like interests to start with. And then through conversation, you might uncover additional things that add value. For me, I go to conferences, like I've done a lot of Grant Cardone conferences this year, or I met people with real estate or people with businesses and entrepreneurship. And then I went to some Pace Morby type things. So I was immediately finding people that had some common interests and then talking more about kind of what their plans were, where were they taking it, what do they look like today as far as their journey. And it started to expand. And I've probably added, and I'm the type of person that I don't add more than one or two contacts to my phone in a year period. I probably added 10 to 15 of people that I'll talk to. Some are coming up a little bit behind where I'm at, and many are way beyond where I'm at. But I started with saying, okay, what is it I want to learn more of? Where do I want my network to grow? And then where can I find those people? And I think that's extremely important because you'll be surprised. There are groups for almost everything. One of the ones I regret never getting involved in was young professionals. When I qualified as a young professional, I no longer qualify with the Santa beard, but um, that was one of those things that I know people come in and they talk about. A lot of it's like personal too, but it's mostly around kind of what are you doing, how are you going up, who are you connected with, and then you have more connections. I know people that have found 2, 3, 4 jobs just through that network of young professionals. So there are always some type of group that you can go and connect. And like we talked about earlier, maybe a little uncomfortable for the first couple of times, but just go. Sometimes people are going to see you there a couple of times and they're just going to come up to you. The extroverts will come find you. And then just be comfortable with having that conversation. And then continue to work on your confidence to go in and be a little bit more extroverted to talk to other people. That will go a long way.
Yeah. Once you start focusing on networking, like I said, do your homework, write down who you want to be in your dream team. One thing that I had to do this year has been huge for me in networking, has been a major focus. I literally had to create a spreadsheet and start documenting the folks that I met. And I'll have, the person's name, their company, what their role is, how I met them, who connected me to that person, a little bit about what we talked about, and then like some follow up. And so it's kind of like a tickler file where I will review it from time to time. I must admit, I need to update it. I haven't touched it in a while, but I'll review it from time to time, and it helps me keep track of who I need to check in with, what the follow up was. Was I supposed to do something for that person? Let me go ahead and make sure I did what I was supposed to do. But it gives me ideas on how to continue to network with them. And it's hard to remember who all is in your network. Like once you really start focusing on it, it's going to grow and grow and grow. And you don't want to leave anybody out. So I highly suggest that whatever is the best way for you. I know that there are some apps to kind of keep track of your network and things like that. Like I said, I just went old school and did a spreadsheet. Whatever works for you, keep track of these things. The worst thing in the world is to create this amazing network and then let it fall by the wayside.
Yep.
And then you got to eat humble pie and reach out and say something like, I'm getting back into networking, or sorry, I haven't reached out. You don't want to have to do that. You don't have to reach out to people every month or every week. It could just be a couple times during the year. Figure out what that frequency looks like and what's comfortable for you. But definitely keep track of what's going on in your networking so that you can make sure you're checking in periodically.
And I need to do more of that. I can think of a couple from that last conference. I'm like, well, I really should have touched base with them by now. You get busy, things happen, but spend that time. And I think to your point, the more organized you are, the easier it is to do that because we have so many things going on. It's easy to kind of let some of those things slide, but it is important. And I tend to put notes on their contacts on my phone. At least, where did I meet them? What was their business? If it's a business type conference, kind of what was their focus? Um, I can see myself doing a spreadsheet thing too. We're both on that little bit of data nerd side. We have some of that piece to us. So, but I think it's a great tip. And then I would say also don't make it too robotic and too consistent. If it's the same thing every time on the same frequency, most people are going to say, okay, they've got a reminder, they hit the button and they do this. Make sure it's a little bit organic. And I think that will go a long way. But I do like that idea of at least kind of having some kind of reminder in your head so you can go out there and make sure you're doing the touch base. That will go a long way. It's kind of that whole the grass is the greenest where you water it, where you take care of it. So build that relationship, put that effort in.
Another thing that will help you stand out is to become a master connector. We talked about this, and I didn't appreciate this as much in corporate as I do now in this entrepreneurial journey. Connecting people when you're having conversations and somebody brings up, I'm working on this, I'm really kind of struggling with XYZ. You should be thinking, who do I know that can help them, or who do I know that can maybe point them in the right direction? When you connect people for various reasons, it may just be that they're in a similar arena and you thought it would be great for them to connect and know each other, and then they can take it from there. Or you hear that somebody has a weakness in a certain area, or they're looking for something, and somebody who can bring that to the table. Hey, I know a friend who's doing this, and do you mind if I share your information with them? I'd love to connect you guys. This may help with what you're missing. People really appreciate that, and they remember that. So it's not about, I did something for you, you owe me, but people innately remember when you do something for me and for them, and it resonates, and they'll remember you in the same manner when something else comes up. So again, that's a way to think about what is it that I can do for others, and approach networking from that perspective versus what I can take. Once you've done things for people, you've connected them, you've helped them in a certain way, when you do actually need something, it's so much easier to call and say, hey, I know you're in this arena. I'm actually looking for a role. Do you happen to know of any roles, or can you connect me with someone who's in that space? And they're like, oh, yeah. You may not even be able to keep up with all the opportunities and connections that they throw at you. And then they'll go the extra mile to even reach out to the person before you connect with them. Hey, this is Justin. It's my good friend. You love when they, present you in that way, not just a connection. This is my good friend.
Yep.
And then that puts the other person in a different world. Oh, this is somebody's friend. Okay, let me make sure I take care of them. So think about, those are all getting back to the, making those genuine connections, and not just being surface level with your networking.
But that also brings up a good point. And the term I always use, network is your net worth, right? So it's not about networking with anybody and everybody. You do want to expand your network, but you got to pay attention, because if you have somebody that's then putting you out there that has a bad reputation, that actually may be a negative on you. Now you've got to think about, what are these people doing? Are they like-minded? They're heading in the right direction, doing the right things, versus I'm just going to connect and blast with everybody I can, get as many people as I can, and then have everybody saying my name. Well, that doesn't work. That's not as impactful and as effective. So you want to make sure you're connecting with the people that are doing what you want to do, or in the right arena, or at the level that you want to get to, whatever that looks like. And then you're getting the benefit of their word, to your point, that actually probably carries some weight. So I'm very particular about, I don't want a I do want a big network, but they all have to be kind of in that same group, heading the same direction. I don't care what level you're at today. You may be just coming up, but you have the right mindset, the right direction, you're heading there. And maybe, to your point, you're already connected to other people that are beneficial too. So let's keep growing our networks together. There's a lot of value there.
Yeah. I think we've thrown out lots of good tips today. There's other things that we didn't get to talk about. We can keep going on forever. One of the things we didn't touch on is mentors and sponsors. And I know that's a huge thing in corporate America. When you start out, especially, they want to connect you with a mentor. And as you kind of rise up the ranks in your career, you want to make sure you have sponsors. That's something that we can touch on in a future episode. Mentors and sponsors is really important. And from an entrepreneurial perspective as
It's
well,
huge.
you want to make sure you've got your mentors as well. Learning about the sponsor side, we can talk about that a little bit from an entrepreneur perspective, but those are a couple different things that we can touch on in a future episode. So thinking about everything we talked about today, we gave you guys a lot of tips, but for homework, and I hope you guys are doing the homework. Hearing something versus actually doing it, writing things down, it makes a big difference. So I hope you guys are taking some time to do the homework. Why don't you, like I said, think about who you want to be on your dream team? If you could have anybody in your network, who would that be? First, step back and think about what your goals are, what your purpose is. If you've gone through and done the steps and landed on your purpose, what's your purpose? And what are the goals you have around getting to living in your purpose? Well, who do you want to be in your network? What types of people do you want to be in your network? What kind of skills do you want folks to bring to the table? Geographies, like I mentioned, if you're wanting to, get your foot in the door in a certain area, think about all those things and then write down what that dream team looks like and start making a plan on how you can connect with the right people and build out your network. And then you hear us talking about accountability partners, bring that up again as well. Make sure you've got an accountability partner. It'd be great if two of you were working on this or, more with your dream team and then hold each other accountable. And you can actually attend events together. If you want to have that support, somebody in the room, you can look across the room and they can give you courage. Or you guys can walk around and meet people together. That's always helpful as well. So create your dream team network list and start working on that. Again, drop some comments in. Let us know how that exercise goes for you. Let us know how you guys approach networking, what you found that are good tips, and what's helped you along the way. If you're an introvert like us, what do you do to help you when you walk in a room? And you extroverts, let us know how you guys approach it. All these tips could be helpful things for us to use as we move forward. Anything else you want to add there, Justin?
Yeah, I would say just keep in mind that the goal here is obviously help as many as we can and also build a community. So when we ask for those comments and insight, we want to make sure people are going to realize that if you make a comment, there's probably a whole lot of people that are feeling like you are experiencing the same thing as you. So it helps the community as a whole as we try to help you if we can. So I think that there's a lot of value in that. Also, I always hate the word homework. I was always anti homework, but it is about the work. It is about doing the things. We're not going to test you. You're going to test yourself. You're going to see how far you've come and you're going to see the value you've come through. But as we call it homework, it's just things for you guys to start to work on and create the tools and the skill sets that are going to help you get to that level of fulfillment, get to the next level of achievement, and look back on where you're at today and say, I really did it. I came a long way. I've done all these things. So as we say homework, those are things that are definitely going to help you as you kind of move forward. So look into those, spend some time on that. Don't take 30, 40 hours when you're starting. Do a little bit. Try a little bit, and it'll start to become a habit as you go through it, and it'll make a definite difference for you.
Well, that's it for today, guys. We hope you learned something from this networking discussion. Let us know if you got topics that you would like for us to cover as we're building out our future episodes. We want to cover what you want to hear.
Right.
So drop that in the comments as well. Otherwise, until next time, we'll see you. Have a good week.
Great one.